Hi everyone, I'm back. It's John. I just filmed what I thought was installment 7, so I'm just going to take a seat in this chair since we're sort of on the lower half of this bookshelf, and I'll just pick up right where I left off. We were at Paul Hazard's History of European Thought there, the European Mind from 1680 to 1715, and we'll just come down here and begin. Actually, let me get these out of the way since they sort of hinder the general ability to pull things out. Again, all in random order, no rhyme or reason. This is my still in cellophane copy of Little Craziness I pulled a couple of years ago with the help of Peg at the bookshelf. Hi, Peg, if you're watching. You know what you're responsible for. From the Liberty Fund, this is Montesquieu's My Thoughts, translated, I think, for the first time into English by Henry C. Clarke. And it is a doorstop that is basically a collection of biographical bits, stuff about his life, his work, people he knew. It's something I'm looking forward into delving into one of these days, but it looks like it's going to be a time commitment, and I just don't want to get distracted while I'm reading it. So here is Dan Jones's book on the Plantagenets, the warrior kings and queens who made England. This is a biography of Richard III by Charles Ross. This is one of the... See, can we focus there? California. I think this comes from a series, but I could be wrong. This is John Galsworthy's The Forsyte Saga. A sorely underappreciated novel, The Marble Faun by Nathaniel Hawthorne. A History of the Borgias and Their Enemies, 1431 to 1519 by Christopher Hibbert, popular historian. Another book on Plantagenet England. This is from the Oxford History of England, a great series if you like something a bit more scholarly and thorough. Plantagenet England from 1225 to 1360 by Michael Prestwich. This is The Beginnings of Philosophy in Greece by Maria Michaela Sassi, and this is from Princeton. Let's see, I'll show this one because the other three are of a type. This is from Oxford, and it is their medieval philosophy. Specifically, this is from my all-time favorite podcast. It is called A History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps. It's hosted by a guy by the name of Peter Adamson, who is a philosophy professor in both England and Germany. And he has several volumes out, but this is his volume of condensed podcast material that he wrote up for medieval philosophy, and it has pretty much every major medieval philosopher you could ever want to know about. And the other three on top here are of a piece, like I said, because they are all more Liberty Fund. This is Judgments on History and Historians by Jakob Burckhardt. This is Christianity and Classical Culture. This copy still has its cellophane on it, but I have another one that's read around here somewhere. This is a study of thought and action from St. Augustus to Augustine. St. Augustus. Augustus to Augustine. Augustus to St. Augustine. That's what I should have said. By Charles Norris Cochrane. And one more before I actually get to the bookshelf proper. This is Arthur Hoag's The Origins of the Common Law. And this is exactly what it says. It's just a history of the idea of common law for people who are interested in the historical development of law, like me. All right, so I will, again, these first books here are a bit of a pain, but I will try to show them nevertheless. Let's see. We have to take one out. This is The Origins of the Inquisition in 15th Century Spain by B. Netanyahu. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it probably should, because this was actually written by Benjamin Netanyahu's father. He was a historian. Believe it or not, I did not know this before I came across this book and just searched the name. Of course, out of curiosity, just if there was any relationship, and there is. It's if memory serves, it is his father, who died at a very old age. He was 100 years old or something. Next up is The Classical World, an epic history from Homer to Hadrian by Robin Lane Fox. This is one of the trilogy by Frank Dikötter, Mao's Great Famine, the history of China's most devastating catastrophe from 1958 to 1962. I think that might be an ongoing, that might be a 4-part or 5-part series, I don't know. This is American Painting by The Rise of American Artists from 1867 to 1948 by Annie Cohen Salal. And I'll just show this to get this out of the way. I actually recently saw this on someone else's channel. I think Jason from the Channel of a Disappointed Man might have shown this. This is a book of not original writings by Bakhtin, but it's sort of a discussion of the various contributions that he made to Russian literary criticism about a century ago. This is by Gary Saul Morson and Carol Emerson. It's called Mikhail Bakhtin, Creation of a Prosaics. This is The Restoration of Rome, Barbarian Popes and Imperial Pretenders by Peter Heather. Alexander Solzhenitsyn's November 1916, The Red Wheel. And this is, I think, the second volume there. Adrian Mayer's The Poison King, The Life and Legend of Mithridates, Rome's Deadliest Enemy. Showed a couple of these on my Pile of Possibilities video for the first quarter of Historathon. It's one volume in Robert Caro's gigantic LBJ biography. This is The Means of Ascent. A book that's been sitting here before it was even very apropos to any of our lives. This is Laurie Garrett's The Coming Plague. This is Richard Holmes's the first volume of Richard Holmes's 2-part biography of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. This is Early Visions, 1772 to 1804. And then there is a 3-part sort of history of, well, as you can tell from the title, History of American Religion, by one of the greatest living scholars of that subject, for my money, Martin Marty. And this is Modern American Religion, Volume 1, The Irony of It All, from 1893 to 1919. Volume 2, The Noise of Conflict, from 1919 to 1941. And Volume 3, Under God, Indivisible, from 1941 to 1960. This is a discussion of Hume's historiography. He wrote a sprawling history of England, which you can actually buy on the Liberty Fund, actually, to this day. And it's called Prophet of the Counter-Revolution by Lawrence Bongey. This is from Verso, and this is a biography of Carl Schmitt, The Enemy, an intellectual portrait of Carl Schmitt by Gopal Balakrishnan. And I tried reading this, and it was a bit, despite its relative brevity, it was kind of difficult for me to get into because it was very, very, very academies heavy. And I'm someone who reads a lot of stuff from academic presses, and even this one was a slog for me. So I got about 80 or 100 pages into it and set it down. But Schmitt is an absolutely fascinating figure. If you're interested in the, development of of law in 1930s and 1940s Germany, he was basically, if you know one name, it's Carl Schmitt's name. This is also from Verso, and this is Raymond Williams, Writing in Society. Raymond Williams, one of the seminal figures in the field of cultural studies and literary criticism. This is Juliet Barker's Wordsworth, A Life. 2 volumes of Samuel Eliot Morison. This is The European Discovery of America, The Northern Voyages by Morison. Rather worn copies. And this is The Southern Voyages, 1492 to 1616. Another one of my favorite writers on religion who has unfortunately passed on is Hans Kung. He was a German Catholic theologian who was actually eventually told he couldn't teach anymore for the church because of some of the things that he thought. But he wrote a wonderful, wonderful 3-part series on the Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And this is the book on Islam. It is, I don't want to say comprehensive, but it is quite detailed, and it's Hans Kung's Islam, past, present, and future. I have the book on Christianity around here somewhere, and I have always been looking for the book on Judaism, except I've never found it at a price I want to pay, so I don't have it at this time. This is Maiden Castle by John Cowper Powys. And I was at one time interested in getting into Icelandic noir, or I guess sort of cold weather noir. This is Henning Mankel's The Dogs of Riga. And 2 more books I showed for Historathon Quarter 1. This is Plutarch's Lives, Volume 1, in the Dryden translation. And this is Volume 2. This is Marjorie Perloff's Wittgenstein's Ladder, Poetic Language, and the Strangeness of the Ordinary. It's a book of literary criticism. This is a book by Roberto Colasso, who wrote a lot on mythology, literature, their interconnections, all of that good stuff. This is his book on Tiepolo, called Tiepolo Pink. Here's an old Wordsworth edition of Sybil by Benjamin Disraeli. And if you're wondering if that's the 19th century British Prime Minister, yes, it is. He also wrote novels. A book from one of my other interests. I'm a bit of a perfume person, so I have several books on the history of perfume, scent, the olfactory sense, all of that good stuff. This is The Secret of Scent, Adventures in Perfume and the Science of Smell by Luca Turin, who is one of the better known writers on fragrance and perfume reviewing. Two more. This is All That Is Solid Melts into Air, The Emergence of Modernity by Marshall Berman. And the last book, let's see if we can wriggle it out of the edge here. This is a book of literary pieces, occasional pieces called Stranger Shores, literary essays by J.M. Coetzee, the novelist. All right, I will end this here, and I will talk to you later. Bye, everyone.